On a bike, the free stroke is the amount of lever throw or travel from when the brake pads are in their resting position to when they first contact the braking surface. Adjusting the free stroke changes the way a brake feels in your hands and ultimately influences confidence and even safety on the bike. And it's an adjustment that's often overlooked during the initial setup. If the free stroke is too long, the lever's resting point or reach has to be adjusted further out from the handlebars to avoid contact upon braking. This can cause some riders to feel nervous that the brake levers are too hard to reach, especially from the drops. On the other hand, if the free stroke is too short, the brakes can have an overly tight feeling and the braking can become erratic as they will bite even with the light lever touch. The free stroke is a very personal adjustment and there's no correct free stroke length. However, it's something no cyclist should overlook. The only caveat, not all braking systems have a free stroke adjustment. Technically, all cable-actuated rim brakes have a free stroke adjustment, but the term is usually reserved for disc brakes. Mechanical disc brakes have the advantage in that the free stroke is easily adjusted by taking cable slack out of the system. Fine-tuning the adjustment is usually as simple as using the barrel adjuster by the lever or the caliper itself. On hydraulic disc brakes, however, it's not as simple to adjust the free stroke as it's a closed fluid system. To make this adjustment easier, some of the higher-end hydraulic levers have incorporated a free stroke adjustment through some crafty engineering that changes the starting point of the master cylinder piston. Now, one thing I didn't know before I bought a bike spec'd with Shimano GRX 600 levers is that these hydraulic disc brakes don't have a free stroke adjustment. It turns out that in the GRX lineup, only the top-end 810 levers have the free stroke adjustment. Now, this trend is actually common across the Shimano road line of hydraulic levers too. Specifically, only the Ultegra and Dura Ace models get a free stroke adjustment, while the lower to mid-range levers like Tiagra and 105 don't. This isn't usually one of the main selling points of hydraulic disc brake systems, but I feel that it should be, as it can drastically affect the feel of the levers. So what do you do if you don't have a top-spec hydraulic lever, but still want to adjust the free stroke? Well, it turns out you still have an option. So in this example, I have the GRX 600 levers on my Specialized Diverge, but this process should really work for any hydraulic brake lever. Right now I've got these set up to have a really long free stroke. Notice too that the reach has to be set out pretty far so that the lever doesn't come in contact with the handlebars. The reach adjustment is different from the free stroke in that the reach only sets the resting point of the lever, and the free stroke actually adjusts the amount of lever travel before the braking is engaged. Now in this case, remember there's no free stroke adjustment like on the 810, so we're basically going to trick the system into thinking that the rotors are thinner than they actually are, effectively shortening the free stroke and tightening up the brake feel. Now I should warn you, what we're about to do is taboo in the bike world. Anytime you remove your disc wheels, what's the number one rule? You never squeeze the brake lever with the wheel off. Well, the reason for that is that when you squeeze the lever too far with no rotor between the pads, you'll actually reset the resting point of the pads within the calipers. And if you set the pad resting point too close to each other, you actually won't be able to fit the rotor back into the caliper. If this happens, it's not a huge deal. You just need a flat plastic pry bar to separate the pads and push them back into the caliper without damaging them. So in this free stroke adjustment hack, we're basically just taking advantage of this property. What you want to do is, with the wheel off, squeeze the lever just far enough so that the pads reset their resting position a little bit closer together, but not so close that you can't put the wheel back on. You want to go incrementally and test each time you squeeze the pads. So squeeze a little bit, then put the wheel back in and see how it feels. If it's not short enough, then take the wheel out and squeeze a little bit further than the last time. If you squeeze too far and the brakes feel too tight, you can always carefully separate the pads with a flat, non-marring pry bar like this automotive trim panel remover. Now once you get your free stroke dialed in, it'll actually stay that way until you change it again, either by accidentally squeezing the lever with no rotor or by manually pushing the pads back into the calipers. One thing to note about this adjustment, if your rotors aren't reasonably straight, then adjusting the free stroke in this way will likely result in some pad rub, as the brake pads are physically resting closer to the rotor. Thankfully, rotor truing is a pretty simple process if you're careful and pay attention to detail. A pro tip here, placing a light-colored or well-lit background behind the caliper will allow you to see the pad gaps and determine if any rubbing is caused by an out-of-true rotor or a misaligned caliper. Okay, so I've got my free stroke dialed in just where I like it. And what I can do now is I can bring the reach adjustment inward until it feels comfortable without worrying that the lever will hit the handlebars when I squeeze the brakes. In theory, this process should work on any modern hydraulic braking system, GRX 400, 600, and even the road line of Tiagra and 105, and also mountain bike brakes that don't have a free stroke adjustment. The concept should apply across the board. Alright, so hopefully you found this tip useful. Now even us cyclists with low to mid-range components can adjust the free stroke on our hydraulic disc brakes and dial in the fit and feel of our brakes. Give it a shot and let me know how it goes. Questions and comments are always appreciated. See you next time.